Well, just a couple of quick topics today. Before we get started, though, if you're wondering why am I wearing this ugly, disgusting, lime green, weird shirt, one of my online friends, someone who is engaged in this social justice battle, sent it to me. And so I just wanted to say thank you, I guess. It is actually pretty cool. It's a Social Gospel Coalition, official Social Gospel Coalition shirt, which leads me to my very first topic. Here is this guy in the Gospel Coalition? I should have done my research before I did this. I know that he's in those circles, right? Thomas Kidd. He might write for the Gospel Coalition. I don't know. But, you know, they all sound the same to me. Everyone that's in this clique, they all sound the same to me. And actually, to Cody Leibold, they all sound the same as well. Here is a tweet. Let's talk about it. This is an interesting tweet. Thomas Kidd says, "I am bullish on the future of an evangelicalism which is theologically orthodox, kingdom-minded, and not beholden to political parties." That sounds pretty good. I'm bullish on that too. "I am bearish on hyper-politicized, civil religion-preaching evangelical leaders who carry water for Trump on Fox News. Hashtag who is an evangelical." Well, let me tell you something about this. This is a tweet that, you know, like the way he's written it, well, how could you disagree with it? It's like someone saying, like, I'm pro-poor people. And it's like, yeah, I mean, me too. But what do you really mean by that? This is how liberals tend to frame arguments. Like, I'm pro-poor people, so therefore you have to go with all my welfare policies. It's like, nah, I don't have to do that, actually. Anyway, but bullish on a future of evangelicalism which is theologically orthodox. Who could disagree with that? I like that too. Kingdom-minded. Again, who could disagree with that? And not beholden to political parties. Now, this is what the tweet really means. What this means is he is bullish on a evangelicalism that isn't Republican anymore. That's what this means. That's what this means. And the reality is, like, and then he frames it. You can either be like him, super smart and not a Republican, well, at least a fundy Republican, or you can be someone who carries water for Trump, and he's hyper politicized. And see, here's the thing about this that's so funny and so ironic, is that, you know, there are a lot of evangelicals who are just pro-Trump no matter what he says, no matter what he does. There are some people like that, but in the reform, sort of very serious-minded evangelical circles, and again, this is not a hard and fast rule, but what I see is a lot of people who, and this is coming from, just again, to give you some of my credentials here, this is coming from someone who did not vote for Trump and did not support Trump. So I'm not saying I'm totally unbiased, but this is from an outsider's perspective. Here's what I see. I see a lot of people who support Trump when he does something good and do not support Trump when he does something bad. Let me give you a perfect example. Here is a tweet that I saw roundly condemned, roundly criticized by serious-minded Christians. And I saw the most hilarious comment on this tweet. This is Trump talking about his little trade war that he has with China, which I hope he wins. I don't think we should be engaging in trade wars, but if we're going to be in one, I might as well win, right? But anyway, here's what he says. He says, "Our great American companies are hereby ordered to immediately start looking for alternatives to China." And the funniest comment that I saw on this one was, "Okay, Chancellor Palpatine." You think you're God of the universe, don't you? Anyway, but yeah, so this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like a lot of fair-minded Christians that are not social justice advocates, when Trump does something good, they praise it, they like it, they support it. When he says something stupid and authoritarian and tyrannical, like hereby ordered to do this or that he has no authority to hereby order you to do, we condemn it. That's what I see. But what's interesting about this is the hyper-politicized ones are people like Thomas Kidd, who are anti-Trump no matter what. They just never Trump. No way, no how. That's what hyper-politicized politics looks like. The Gospel Coalition is hyper-politicized. They are anti-Trump in every conceivable way. It doesn't matter if he does something good. It doesn't matter if he does something bad. He'll never get credit for the good. He'll always get credit for the bad. And this is what Thomas Kidd and people like him are. They are hyper-politicized, all while pretending that they're the reasonable, non-hyper-politicized one. It's just preposterous, it's ridiculous, and that's that. Anyway, let's talk about something else right now. I may have talked about this on my YouTube channel before, but I can't remember, and I always get new subscribers, so this is an interesting thing. So if you've ever talked to a social justice advocate, those conversations usually last about 30 seconds. They usually last about 30 seconds, and then you get blocked, and then you get called a racist and things like that. But if you're able to talk for more than 30 seconds, a lot of times the conversation will go something like this. The social justice advocate will say, "We are systemically racist." And then the reasonable person will say, "Okay, fair enough. Well, what evidence do you have of systemic racism?" And then, the social justice advocate will say usually one of two things. He'll either say, "If you can't see it, I don't know what to tell you." And then that's just kind of stupid. But a lot of times what they'll do instead is the evidence that they'll provide is a statistical disparity. They'll say something like this. Well, the average income for a black family is $10,000, and the average income for a white family is $20,000. Therefore, that's an example. That's evidence of systemic racism. Or blacks are more likely to be incarcerated than whites. Or the net wealth of a black family is lower than the net wealth of a white family. And those statistical disparities, which I have no reason to deny that they're true, they're probably true, those disparities are cited as an example of systemic racism. So what is that telling you? If you look in the Bible, every example of injustice that you see, just consider all the examples of injustice that you can find and how God defines injustice. Does he define it this way? Does he define it as in terms of a statistical disparity? No, he does not. No, he does not. There are righteous poor and there are unrighteous poor. There are righteous rich and there are unrighteous rich. It's just that simple. Now, what are you really saying when you say the statistical disparity of income or wealth or whatever is the injustice, is the evidence of the injustice? What are you saying? How would you know if the injustice was solved? How would you know? Well, if you're using the statistical disparity as the evidence of the injustice, the only way to know that there was no injustice is if the statistical disparities were eliminated. Excuse me, sorry about that. If the statistical disparities were eliminated. And the thing is that in the Bible, that's not that's not how you know you're doing something just or unjust. And so what will happen when something unbiblical is your standard of justice, namely the disparity, right? That's not a biblical standard of justice. But if that becomes your standard of justice, you will do all kinds of unbiblical, unjust things to accomplish your unjust goals. You can't accomplish unjust goals with just means. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And so the social justice warrior will always make things worse with his or her policies. It will always happen because, again, you cannot accomplish an unjust goal through just means. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So the typical strategies, socialism, wealth redistribution, affirmative action, all of these things are evil in themselves because they have an evil goal. The goal of having perfect proportions is not a biblical goal. And so to accomplish an unbiblical goal, it always uses unbiblical evil standards. That's just how it is. If you could think of an example of how to accomplish a biblical goal with, an unbiblical goal with good, just methods, I'd be interested to hearing about it. I don't think it works that way. I really don't. And so if you talk to a Christian social justice warrior that is bemoaning all of these disparities and things like that and say, well, we need to do something to accomplish perfect parity, I question whether they even know how to define, perfect parity according to biblical standards. You see, the Bible again and again cites income disparities, income inequalities, wealth disparities, wealth inequalities, and it never says that that's evil in itself. It never says that. Look, I'm all about trying to help disadvantaged communities, learn how to, get more wealth, get more income, things like that. That's a good thing, but the goal can't be to make everything even Stevens. The goal has to be so that they can honor God more in what they do. This is not really that complicated. But anyway, so again, if the statistical disparity, if you're talking to a social justice warrior and you say, and they cite a statistical disparity as evidence for injustice, I'd ask him to show you in the Bible where that's an injustice. Show us in the Bible where that is. Show us in the Bible where the goal should be parity, equality, everything equity. Look, Equity in the Bible talks about fairness. It talks about impartial, non-partiality, things like that. It doesn't talk about even Steven's income. That's not what it is. It is not what it is. Anyway, let's end with a funny thing. This is Ekemini Uwan. And, to be perfectly honest, she is a buffoon. She's a clown. The only person that I know that is more of a buffoon than Ekemini is Kyle Howard. It's just that simple. Ekemini is, she's on the Truth Table podcast. She's a mover and shaker in the social justice world. She's probably a feminist. I don't really know if she calls herself one, but she definitely is one. Anyway, listen to this tweet. This is a good one. What is happening in the hashtag Amazon rainforest is environmental racism. Period. My soul cries out, act for the Amazon. Environmental racism. This is the whiteness is wicked lady. Whiteness is wicked. I tried to find her tweet log to see if she explained this any further, but I'm blocked. Imagine that. I don't know how I got blocked. I don't think I've ever talked to her before. I might have been, though. It might have been. She was one of the stars of my Social Justice Unredacted video. Have you seen that? Social Justice Unredacted. She is an admin in a anti-racism group where she just has the craziest rules, the craziest input. I mean, the reality is that Ekemini is a racist, so I got blocked by a racist, and I don't care. The only reason I might care is because of I miss funny tweets like this. But Ekemini is a racist. If you look at her history, look at the things that she says, whiteness is wicked. That's a racist statement. Ekemini is a racist, and she thinks that the burning rainforest in the Amazon is environmental racism. I mean, look, some people say, do you even know what that is? No, I don't. And I don't care. And I think it's funny. How do you like that? How do you like that? Anyway, I hope that this video was helpful. We'll do some more videos this week. God bless. One more thing, I've been talking to a lot of different people and even thinking about things myself, and a lot of people are really weary of this controversy, and I understand. I mean, I've mentioned that, I took a vacation recently, and it felt really good to not be engaged, too much in this. But one thing, just a piece of advice for you. The Bible says, be angry, but do not sin, right? And so anger is something that a good Christian should experience at times. And outrage can be a tool if used properly. Because here's the reality. If you're not outraged by things that are outrageous, then you need to go to God with that. You might have a sin issue. If you're not outraged at, babies being killed, probably in your town today, there'll be some babies killed. If you're not outraged by that, there's something wrong with you. If you're not outraged by pedophiles and sexual deviants going to your library and teaching your kids or other people's kids, if that doesn't outrage you, you've got problems, you've got some serious issues. But outrage itself can only take you so far. And outrage itself cannot be the motivation. Look, I am outraged by abortion. You should be too. You should be outraged. You should be furious. But you need to be motivated by love. Love is the only thing, love for God and love for neighbor, that can actually, carry you to really, fight this battle well, to fight it continually, to fight it even if you're weary. And love, and this is what God commands from us. The greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, your soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. That needs to be the motivation. So when you're outraged by abortion, by babies being killed in your town today, don't just stop with outrage. You have to love those babies enough to keep fighting this evil. When you're outraged by the drag queen story hour, the outrage itself isn't enough. You need to be motivated by the love of God. God gives us, what love looks like. And it's not just a sentimental love. It's not like getting a card in the mail where just like nice, happy feels and stuff like that. No, love is an action. Love requires action. You see, my mom sends me a card in the mail, about how she loves me. That feels good, but not because of the card itself. If it was just the card, it'd be basically worthless. But it's because I know my mom has acted in such a way that demonstrates her love for me over and over and over again. And if I needed her to do it again, she would. She acts in such a way that is loving towards me. And see, that's what you need to do. You need to act in such a way that demonstrates your love for God and your love for your neighbor. And so outrage is not something we should spurn. We should be outraged, but it can't motivate you. It can't take you all the way. You have to be motivated by love. So when I see like Kyle Howard say something outrageous, or a Kemeny Uwan say something racist or something like that, it's outrageous. You see that that angers me, and it makes me want to say things. It makes me want to do things. It makes me want to fight this fight. But what I have to be motivated by is love, because here's the thing: when I rip Kyle J. Howard for saying something racist or saying something evil or saying something anti-biblical, or a Kemeny Uwan or things like that, you know what I'm thinking about a lot of the time? I'm thinking about people, blacks, Latinos, people that are influenced by these charlatans, these buffoons. And I don't want them to be damaged by Kyle J. Howard and a Kemeny Uwan's teaching. And I act out of love for those people. I act out of love for those people, and God willing that somehow Kemeny, the Holy Spirit speaks to Kemeny's heart and she repents of her evil. But the reality is, I'm coming up strong against Kyle J. Howard and these influencers, these leaders, because they're leading many astray. And so I will absolutely rip them when I have the opportunity, when it's necessary, when they say something that's completely outrageous. But what motivates me, hopefully most of the time, is love towards the flock, love towards the many, love towards the crowds that I worry about them all the time being influenced by this kind of ideology. So I hope that this was helpful. God bless.